What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video on what if Deku had the power of the 4 heavenly beasts, part 5. Now I do want to say, go join the Discord down below. Currently we're going to be doing a thing over on my gaming channel for Among Us. It'll be streamed around 1:30 Saturday. So if that interests you, go ahead and click the link down below and join the Discord. It'll be streamed over on my gaming channel, The Ultimate Dino Gamer. And speaking of Discord, let me go shout out people in my Discord. Thank you, Grayson, Minato, Starstruck, Scythe, Sakura Yuji Idori, JT Main _12, F you all, The Thickness, and Squid, SQUYD. Thank you all for joining the Discord. So like I said, go ahead and join the Discord. We'll be doing Among Us over there. And if you want to be a part of that, well, I need to, have you guys over there. Let's jump straight into this what if. Now, where we last left off, Izuku had just fallen asleep and preparing to go to, the USJ the next day. He was very much so prepared for it and was very excited as well. By the time he woke up the next morning, he walked out of his room and said bye to his mom and ended up quickly running. He found that the rest of his classmates were there, which he was pretty happy about, you know. He then ended up preparing and getting ready by staying in the room. Izuku was already well known what the actual, USJ was. Seeing how he already knew what it was, he was pretty excited for it. It was a new building that was just recently made. So he was pretty hyped. Izuku ended up quickly preparing everything else he had. Uraraka had stopped by and chatted with him for a bit before going to prepare her own items. Izuku almost laughed when talking to Uraraka because he felt like it was so weird, you know? He unlocks a new form that almost murdered everyone and no one seems to care. That's fine. He figured people are going to be asking about it today, more likely than ever. He also didn't know what really to say about it. His new form, in fact, was something that him himself really didn't have that much knowledge about. So he really didn't know what to say when it came to discussions of it. The pure fact of the matter was that he had to say something, and something was better than nothing in Izuku's eyes. He ended up getting on the bus. On the bus right there, they were talking about their quirks and everything, with a few questions being thrown at Izuku about what his quirk was and what that new form was and everything, which made Izuku slightly, blush. He didn't really know what to say. Was he meant to just say that, his new form was something that he didn't know about his quirk and look like an idiot? Thankfully, Bakugo covered for him, saying that Izuku never used some of his other forms, mainly because of the dangerous implications that they could have, and he just accidentally let control. This confused most of the people. Relatively confused on why Izuku just decided not to use his thing. Most people figured, Izuku would just use his quirk. Especially when it was one as uniquely cool and powerful as he is. Of course, what they didn't know is that Izuku had no clue about this new third form, and didn't even know about the actual dangerous implications that would be caused if he just took assumption of the form. Then again, Izuku knew that he really didn't have all the time in the world to care about that currently. But he also knew it was an issue that he had to master, thinking that maybe if he mastered it, he would be able to actually control the form to a higher degree and use it in basic combat. He noticed it had the ability flight, which was on its own a pretty impressive ability. Not many people can say they had flight, let alone flight and fire. Especially because Izuku's flight seemed kind of weird. It seemed to primarily be not so much flight as it was a weird, how to say it? A weird form of levitation, because he doesn't actually fly. He just levitates. Izuku ended up deciding that maybe he should look into his capabilities more. Mainly because, he didn't really know much about his own skill set, other than that it was a skill set that existed. This caused issues for Izuku, knowing that Izuku really didn't have much of a choice here. He had to think of something. And if he couldn't, well, Izuku didn't know what he would do. Izuku ended up deciding that he would start working on his ability. He figured he could probably find some place in the USJ to train solo, so it really didn't matter to him. They ended up pulling up, much to Izuku's excitement. He looked around, being pretty exciting. He was mainly confused, though, about what was going on and, what all happened. He ended up walking inside the building, being one of the actual first ones to walk in. He ended up meeting the Hero 13, which was a weird situation for Izuku. Not really knowing how to respond to the white-suited hero, he decided to wait until everyone else came here. 13 understood Izuku's actions and guessed he was probably just a shy/nervous kid. Thought it was funny how a sly/nervous kid somehow wound up being a hero, or wanted to be a hero. Izuku was very excited, though, looking around at everything. He knows how everything works, and he knew that he would be able to have lots of great times here. The pure ability alone allowed him to have lots of fun, so he never really needed to think about it. Izuku ended up walking around, and eventually left the class there, and they all met up in the center. This made it easy for 13 to explain their goal and objective here. She ended up explaining that this was a joint training facility, Majority of the time, it's going to be used to help out with their training, and nothing more or less. Because of this, she expected that most of the students here would probably show up maybe 3 to 4 times throughout the first semester, seeing how they would probably be way more constant at a later time in their year rather than the earlier ones. Eventually, after daring some explanation, Izuku saw weird purple portals start forming in the center. This caught the attention of Aizawa as well, as he told all the students to quickly get close to each other and try to exit the building. Sadly, when they tried to, the door seemed to be blocked. They didn't know by what, but they expected it was some sort of quirk that barred their exit. Looking around, they were able to notice that the portal had opened up and started to pour out more villains. Tons of villains. A stupid amount. This caused Izuku to be kind of like, freaked out. It's not every day if villains just randomly show up during your joint training exercise. Let alone in the blink of an eye like how they had done. This caused Izuku to not really be scared, but a little bit upset. Of course, what happened next would have scared anyone there, including Izuku himself. Purple portals appeared around them, separating them. Izuku found himself on a boat. What really angered him that there were villains resting in the waters below. This anger slowly started to make his blood boil as he looked around to see if anyone else was on the boat with him. He saw that Froppy and Mineta both were on the boat. This excited Izuku because he realized that he wouldn't have to brave it alone in case if he had to fight anything. But also remember that these people were not only his classmates, but most likely both were pretty well off at using their quirk if they got into Class 1A. Izuku asked Froppy and Mineta what are their quirks, and Mineta stated that he had balls he can take off of his head and throw. And they're sticky, but they only stick to him. And Froppy ended up stating that she could, have a long tongue. This caused Izuku to be very confused, and Froppy stated that she acted basically like a frog, which Izuku thought was a cool quirk. A little bit on the useless side, but cool. Izuku then looked around and saw that they were in the middle of the ocean. Obviously, if they knew Froppy's quirk, they wouldn't just set her in the middle of the ocean. That makes no sense. So that means they must have not known about Froppy's quirk, meaning that they didn't have extensive information about them. This was like the best information Izuku could have gotten at this point. This allowed him to deduce many things about the villains, thinking that they didn't have ideas for in case of every student. Izuku ended up quickly deducing that he should be able to just quickly fly over there in his bird form, in his phoenix form. But he then realized that flying over there was not an option unless if he wanted to relieve Froppy and Mineta here all alone, which was not Izuku's options either. He ended up deciding on something different then. He told Froppy to wait for his signal, and she asked, "What signal?" Izuku said that she will understand when it happens. It's a pretty large signal. This confused Froppy even more, but she went along with Izuku's plan, seeing how it was the most logical thing to do for her to do at the time. Eventually, Izuku jumped straight headfirst into the water, scaring both Froppy and Mineta calling him an idiot for just diving straight headfirst, while Froppy looking to make sure if Izuku was okay. A few minutes later, the water started to boil, and this boiling water got increasingly hotter, and hotter, and hotter, till eventually steam started erupting off the water. Most of the villains inside the water were freaking out at this point. And Froppy was pretty confused about this as well. Eventually, she saw that where the water was constantly melting, someone looked like they were slowly starting to come out of it. This person, of course, being Izuku. He slowly raised, and Froppy could notice that Izuku was in his Phoenix form. Froppy knew Izuku only took this form when it was a very dangerous situation. She understood that this situation was pretty dangerous. So she was okay with Izuku transforming into it. She understood that it was a situation that she needed to understand. Eventually, Izuku ended up quickly flying out of the water, trying to make it back to mainland before the villains could even see him. The water at this point had been mostly evaporated. Only a few people knew it was Izuku who had done it. And those few people that did actually started to realize that the boy was way stronger than he had let on in this form. So strong, in fact, that he evaporated an entire lake in an instant. This scared some of the people, but then again, they all understood that Izuku was mainly doing this to help them. So they understood he wouldn't take the form unless under intense situations like this one. Izuku ended up quickly looking around to see where this headmaster villain is, and found him standing. He figured it was the man who looked like he was itching his face with hands all over his body, which Izuku found to be quite disgusting, and couldn't really see the purpose in his villain costume, if you could call it that. Izuku ended up quickly flying over to the man and touching down. The man talked to a purple-looking guy standing next to him. He said something that Izuku couldn't quite hear, and suddenly a portal opened, and out stepped out this weird bird-like creature that Izuku really didn't know about at all. The creature looked like a bird, which confused Izuku greatly. Didn't know why a weird bird was standing in front of him, but it didn't matter much to him now. He knew that he had to, take care of the villain. And the villain was being quite annoying. So Izuku eventually stepped closer and closer to the weird bird creature. As its skin slowly started to melt, the creature didn't even react, seeming to be very calm and docile. Where its skin was being burnt seemed to be healing. This scared Izuku a little bit. He understood that if what he figured is happening, then his idea of safely taking care of the situation was not going to work. Izuku decided he needed to rethink his plan just a tiny bit. And decided that he needed to quickly increase the heat. So he used his body temp, and slowly it got hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter. Suddenly his vermilion colored wings slowly started to tinge with blue, being warmer and hotter than they were before. So much so that it seemed like himself was burning into ashes and then being reformed back into a similar shape. The creature in front of him screeched out in pure fear and terror, and Izuku slowly started to lose consciousness as standing. But after a few minutes, the creature had fallen. Izuku had finished with what he had wanted to do. He looked over to see the man still standing there, itching his face in a mainly angry and displeased look. Izuku didn't know what to do. He was all out of energy after that most recent fiend he activated, so he really couldn't help much with the situation. Expecting that one of the teachers would handle it, Izuku then collapsed right there on the floor. When he woke up, he found out that some teachers had shown up after Ida had left. This, delighted Izuku, knowing that people had shown up just as he believed they would. Afterwards, Izuku, after waking up in the hospital bed and getting briefed, drifted back off to sleep. That's where I'm going to leave it off, guys. If you liked it, hit the like button. If you enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button. And just for anyone who's still watching, I'll give you an update on what I plan to do next. I plan to do What If Deku Was Transported to SAO. I did search up and I saw that some other people had done this one before, but I decided I can probably put my own twist on it. I haven't watched any videos on it or anything, but that's what I plan to do next. So if you guys want that, show your supports in the comment section. And until next time, goodbye.